The wedding china gleamed under the dining room chandelier, each piece carefully arranged on the lace tablecloth my late husband Robert and I had received 40 years ago. I ran my fingers along the gold rim of a dinner plate, remembering happier times. But when Brian walked through that door tonight, when he saw who was really sitting at this table, when he understood the true purpose of this carefully planned celebration, his smug confidence would shatter just like the teacup he'd thrown at my head 3 months ago. Let me back up. My name is Linda, and until 4 years ago, I thought I knew what my life would look like in my late 50s. Robert, my husband of 35 years, had passed away from a sudden heart attack in March 2020, right as the world was shutting down. The grief was suffocating, but I had our son Brian. My sweet, successful Brian with his marketing firm and his beautiful wife Jennifer. He promised me I'd never be alone. He promised he'd take care of me. I should have known something was wrong when Jennifer filed for divorce that June. Brian showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just temporary, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek. "Until I get back on my feet. You know how expensive apartments are these days." I was thrilled, actually. The house felt too empty without Robert. Having my son back, even under sad circumstances, felt like a second chance. I'd get to take care of him the way I did when he was young, before life got so complicated. I made his favorite meals. I did his laundry. I asked him about his day. That first month, he was the Brian I remembered. Polite, grateful. He'd help with dishes and we'd watch game shows together in the evening, just like when he was in high school. But then July came, and his business started hemorrhaging clients. He'd spend hours in the guest room, door locked, phone calls getting louder and angrier. The first time he snapped at me, I was so shocked I actually laughed. "What's so funny?" he'd snarled when I asked if he wanted pot roast for dinner. "You think this is amusing? I'm losing everything and you're asking about pot roast?" I apologized, of course. He was stressed, going through a divorce, losing clients. I understood. I was a nurse for 33 years. I knew about stress. By August, the pot roast incident didn't seem so unusual anymore. Every conversation became a minefield. I learned to read his moods from the sound of his footsteps on the stairs. Heavy steps meant anger. I'd make myself scarce, retreating to my bedroom or pretending to be absorbed in gardening. But our house, the 2-story colonial that Robert and I had bought when Brian was 5, wasn't big enough to hide. "Your cooking is bland," he announced one evening in September, pushing away the plate of chicken parmesan I'd spent 2 hours making. "No wonder Dad had a heart attack. Probably trying to escape your mediocre meals." I felt something crack inside me then. Not break, not yet, just crack. A hairline fracture in the foundation of who I thought my son was. The financial control started in October. "Mom, you're terrible with money," Brian said, watching me pay bills at the kitchen table. "Let me handle it. I work in business, remember?" He was so smooth about it, so reasonable. And I was still grieving Robert, still drowning in the logistics of widowhood. Having someone else manage the account seemed like a blessing. It took me 3 weeks to realize he'd changed all the passwords. Another week to notice that money was disappearing from my savings account. When I asked about it, carefully, gently, he exploded. "You think I'm stealing from you? After everything you put me through growing up? After I gave up my apartment to come take care of your needy ass?" "Brian, I just wanted to understand." "You want to understand? Understand this. I'm 33 years old, divorced, and living with my mother because my entire life fell apart. This house, this money, it should have been mine anyway. Dad would have wanted me to have it. That was the first time I was truly afraid of my own son. By November 2020, the country was deep into the pandemic, and I was deep into something worse. Brian had disconnected the landline. "Saves money," he said. My cell phone mysteriously disappeared one day. "You must have lost it, Mom. You're getting forgetful." When I suggested getting a new one, he looked at me with such cold contempt that I never brought it up again. My friends from the hospital called the house in those early weeks, but Brian always answered, "She's sleeping. She's not feeling well. She'll call you back." I never got the messages. One by one, they stopped calling. The isolation was its own kind of cage, invisible but inescapable. The physical abuse didn't start until March 2021, exactly 1 year after Robert died. I remember because I'd made Robert's favorite cake, a tradition I'd kept for all our years together. Brian found me crying in the kitchen, holding a photo from our anniversary. "Pathetic," he said. "Move on already." "I loved your father," I whispered. "Yeah, and look where that got you. Alone. Broke. With a son who has to babysit you." "I'm not broke, Brian. I have my pension," and Robert left. The slap came so fast I didn't see his hand move. My head snapped to the side, my cheek exploding in pain. I stood there, frozen, my hand pressed against my burning face, unable to process what had just happened. "Don't," he said quietly, "ever question me about money again." He walked out. I stood in the kitchen for 20 minutes, hand still on my cheek, the cake forgotten. In that moment, something shifted. The crack that had started 6 months ago split wide open, but I didn't know how to fix it, didn't know if it could be fixed. So I did what so many people in my situation do. I convinced myself it was an aberration. He was stressed, grieving his divorce. It wouldn't happen again. It happened again 2 weeks later. Then a week after that. Then it became normal, expected, a twisted routine. Burning the toast meant bruises on my arms from where he grabbed me. Forgetting to buy his favorite brand of beer meant being shoved against the counter so hard I cracked a rib. I learned to move like a ghost in my own home, silent and careful, always anticipating his moods, always failing. The shame was worse than the pain. How do you tell someone that your own son, the baby you carried, the child you nursed through fevers and scraped knees and heartbreaks, was beating you in the home you'd raised him in? How do you admit that you, a woman who'd spent 3 decades caring for others, couldn't protect yourself from your own flesh and blood? I stopped going to church. Mrs. Rodriguez, my hairdresser of 15 years, would ask about the bruises during my appointments. "I'm so clumsy," I'd laugh, a hollow sound even to my own ears. Getting old, you know. But I could see she didn't believe me, could see the concern in her eyes every time I sat in her chair, wearing long sleeves in July, makeup caked over the marks Brian's anger left behind. Year 2 was worse. Brian lost his business entirely. The home office became his cave, stinking of whiskey and unwashed clothes. He'd emerge at odd hours, eyes red-rimmed, looking for something to destroy. Usually, that something was me. The verbal abuse was constant, a running commentary on my failures as a mother, a wife, a human being. "You're worthless, you know that?" he'd say, standing in the doorway of my bedroom at 2 a.m. "Dad died to get away from you. I'm stuck here because I'm too broke to leave, but trust me, I'd be gone in a second if I could." I believed him. That's the insidious thing about abuse. At some point, their voice becomes your inner voice. You start to see yourself through their eyes. Worthless, pathetic, a burden. By year 3, I rarely left the house. Brian controlled everything. The mail, the finances, my medication refills. He'd forget to pick up my blood pressure pills. He'd open my few remaining pieces of mail, reading out loud any correspondence from the bank, mocking me for being too stupid to manage my own affairs. The violence escalated. A shove became a punch became being thrown down the stairs. That incident sent me to the emergency room with a fractured wrist. I told them I tripped. The young doctor, probably in his 30s, looked at me with sad, knowing eyes. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I have to ask. Do you feel safe at home?" The question hung in the air between us. I could feel the answer clawing its way up my throat. No, I don't. I'm terrified every moment of every day. I sleep with a chair wedged under my doorknob because I'm afraid of what he might do in the night. I flinch when I hear his footsteps. I've become a stranger in my own skin, a prisoner in my own home. But what came out was, of course, it was just an accident. He didn't press. They never do. Not really. I left with a cast and a follow-up appointment I knew I'd never make it to. The turning point came on a Wednesday morning in April 2024, 4 years into my nightmare. I was at the library, one of the few places Brian still let me go because I could walk there, and he knew the librarians would call him if I was gone too long. I was in the bathroom, staring at my reflection in the harsh fluorescent light. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. Hollow eyes, bruises in various stages of healing along my jaw, shoulders permanently hunched from trying to make myself smaller, less of a target. When I came out, Mrs. Rodriguez was there, returning books at the counter. Our eyes met, and I saw it, that flash of recognition, of understanding. She followed me outside. "Linda," she said, her voice urgent but quiet. "Please, let me help you." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "You're not fine. I've known you for 15 years. I know your son moved in. I know things are bad. Please." She pressed something into my hand. A business card. Domestic Violence Helpline, it read, along with a phone number. "Hide this. Keep it somewhere safe. When you're ready, call them. They helped my sister. They can help you." I started to protest, to make excuses, but she gripped my hand. "You don't have to live like this. You don't deserve this. Call them." She walked away before I could respond. I stood there on the library steps, the card burning in my palm like a live coal. For the first time in 4 years, a tiny spark of hope flickered in the darkness. I hid the card in the lining of my winter coat, a coat Brian never touched because it was too old, too shabby for him to be seen with. Every day, I'd touch it, feeling its edges through the fabric, reminding myself it was there, a lifeline, an escape route. It took me 3 weeks to find the courage to call. I waited until Brian left for a job interview, something that happened once every few months and never amounted to anything. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial the numbers on the payphone outside the grocery store. "National Domestic Violence Hotline, this is Sarah. You're safe here." I broke down. Right there in the Kroger parking lot, I sobbed into the phone, the words pouring out of me in a torrent. Sarah listened. She didn't judge. She didn't ask why I stayed. She just listened, and then she helped me make a plan. "It's going to take time," she said, "but we'll get you out. First, we need evidence. Can you document the abuse? Photos of injuries? Text messages? Anything?" I thought about the old flip phone Robert had kept in his nightstand drawer, the one Brian didn't know about. I can try. Over the next month, I became a spy in my own home. Every bruise, photographed with the old phone when Brian was passed out drunk. Every threatening message he left on scraps of paper, saved and hidden. I recorded his rants when I could, the phone tucked in my bathrobe pocket. The evidence piled up, each piece a stone in the foundation of my escape. Sarah connected me with a domestic violence advocate named Patricia and a detective named Morrison who specialized in elder abuse cases. Elder abuse, the term made me flinch. I was 58, not ancient. But legally, anyone over 55 qualified, and the protections were stronger. "We need to catch him in the act," Detective Morrison said during one of our secret phone calls from the library. "Or we need him to incriminate himself clearly. The photos and recordings help, but he'll claim they're taken out of context. We need something undeniable." That's when Patricia came up with the idea. What if we stage something? A situation where he'll reveal his true nature in front of witnesses. My mind went to the wedding china, still packed away in the attic after Robert's death. Brian had asked about it once, wondering how much it was worth. "Save it for your wedding," I'd said. He'd laughed bitterly. "That ship has sailed, Mom." "What if," I said slowly, "I told him I was selling the house, that I was moving into assisted living and giving him his inheritance early? We could frame it as a celebration dinner." Patricia's voice grew excited. "And we'd have people positioned nearby. Social worker, police. If he reacts violently..." "When he reacts violently," I corrected. "He will. The moment he thinks he's won, that he's gotten what he wants, he'll show everyone exactly who he is." The plan took shape over the next 2 weeks. We'd stage the dinner for a Friday night, when Brian was usually at his drunkest and most volatile. I'd set the table with the wedding china, make his favorite meal, and tell him I was signing the house over to him. Patricia and Detective Morrison would be in Mrs. Rodriguez's house next door, watching through the cameras we'd secretly installed. The moment Brian became violent, they'd move in. "Are you sure about this?" Patricia asked me the day before. "This is dangerous, Linda, if something goes wrong." "Nothing has gone right for 4 years," I said. "I'm not spending another day in that prison. I'm ready." Friday morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I cleaned the house, made a grocery run under Brian's watchful eye. "Special dinner tonight," I told him. "I have news." He barely looked up from his laptop. "Whatever. I spent the afternoon cooking. Pot roast, his favorite. Mashed potatoes with real butter and cream. The green beans his grandmother used to make. Apple pie from scratch. Every dish was perfect, each one a small act of defiance. This would be the last meal I ever cooked for him. At 5 o'clock, I brought down the china. Each piece felt sacred as I arranged it on the table. Robert's grandmother's set, passed down through 3 generations. Brian had no idea of its value, sentimental or monetary. To him, it was just old dishes. I set 2 places, lit candles, put on the blue dress Robert always said made my eyes sparkle. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself again, but this time it was different. There was steel in my spine, purpose in my movements. This woman, battered and afraid for so long, was about to reclaim her life. Brian came downstairs at 6:30, drawn by the smell of food. He stopped in the dining room doorway, taking in the scene, the china, the candles, me, dressed up, smiling. "What's all this?" Suspicion colored his voice. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to his chair. "I made your favorite. We need to talk." He sat slowly, eyes narrowed. I served him, my hands steady despite my racing heart. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Rodriguez's curtain twitch slightly. They were watching. I was not alone. "I've made a decision," I began, sitting across from him. "I'm selling the house." His fork stopped midway to his mouth. "What?" "I'm moving into Meadowbrook Senior Living. It's time. I can't maintain this place anymore, and honestly, it's too full of memories. Your father, you know." I took a sip of water, watching him process. "I want you to have your inheritance now. The house, the accounts, everything. You've sacrificed so much to take care of me these past 4 years. It's only right." I could see the gears turning in his head. Disbelief warring with greed. You're giving me the house? And approximately $400,000 from your father's life insurance and my savings. I'll keep enough for Meadowbrook and my expenses, but the rest is yours. You can finally start over. Get a new apartment. Restart your business. Whatever you want. His face transformed. The perpetual scowl lifted, replaced by something that might have been joy in a different person. But in Brian, it looked like triumph. Like vindication. "When?" he asked. "The papers are ready. We can sign them Monday. I wanted to celebrate tonight with this dinner. A new beginning for both of us." He laughed then, a sound I hadn't heard in years. "A new beginning. God, Mom, you have no idea how happy this makes me. This house, it's worth what, 600 grand at least? And the cash?" He was calculating out loud now, his meal forgotten. "I can move to California, maybe Vegas. Start fresh where no one knows me." "I'm glad," I said softly. "I just want you to be happy." "Happy?" He leaned back, his expression shifting to something ugly. "You want me to be happy? That's rich. You know what would have made me happy? If you'd done this 3 years ago, before I wasted the prime of my life babysitting you." "Brian." "No. Let me finish. Since we're being honest now, let me tell you what these 4 years have been like. Coming back here, to this suffocating house, with you and your constant neediness. Do you know how pathetic you are? How weak?" My pulse quickened. This was it. The mask was slipping. "I mean, Dad had the right idea, dying when he did. At least he escaped. Me, I've been trapped here with you, your terrible cooking, your weeping about him, your pathetic attempts to matter." He was standing now, pacing, his voice rising. "And you just took it, didn't you? Every time I told you what a waste of space you were, every time I—" He stopped abruptly, seeming to realize what he was about to say. But it was too late. The words hung in the air between us. "Every time you hit me?" I finished quietly. "Every time you shoved me, slapped me, threw me down the stairs? Is that what you were going to say?" His eyes went cold. "You fell down those stairs. You're clumsy, remember?" "No," I said, my voice stronger now. "I remember exactly what happened. You were drunk. You were angry because I'd forgotten to buy cigarettes. And you picked me up and threw me. Careful, Mom." His voice was soft, dangerous. "You don't want to ruin this moment. Not when you're so close to freedom." "You're right," I said, standing up. "I don't want to ruin this moment. This moment when you've revealed exactly who you are, what you've done, how you've treated me for 4 years. What are you talking about? But I could see panic starting to creep into his expression. I'm talking about the cameras, Brian, the recordings, the witnesses who have heard every word you just said. The color drained from his face. You're blinking. I'm not. Mrs. Rodriguez next door has been watching through her window. There are cameras in this room, recording everything, and Detective Morrison is probably already on his way over with a warrant for your arrest. He moved fast, faster than I expected for someone who'd drunk 3 beers with dinner. His hand closed around my throat, slamming me back against the china cabinet. Plates crashed to the floor. Robert's grandmother's teacups shattered into pieces. "You stupid bitch!" he hissed, his face inches from mine, his fingers digging into my windpipe. "You think you're so smart? I'll kill you before I let you destroy me." I couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in my vision, but I wasn't afraid anymore, because I could hear it. The sound of the front door crashing open, heavy footsteps, shouting, "Police! Let her go! Let her go now!" Brian's hands released me and I collapsed, gasping, as officers swarmed into the dining room. I watched through watering eyes as they wrestled him to the ground, as they cuffed his hands behind his back, as they read him his rights. Detective Morrison knelt beside me. "Mrs. Thornton? Linda? Are you all right?" I nodded, rubbing my throat, finding my voice. "I'm all right. Did you get it all?" Every second. The verbal abuse, the admission of physical violence, the assault just now. "It's over, Linda. He's going away for a long time." Patricia appeared with a blanket, wrapping it around my shoulders despite the warm evening. "You were so brave," she said. "So incredibly brave." I watched as they led Brian out. He was screaming now, threats and profanity and promises of revenge. But his words had no power anymore. He was in handcuffs, being loaded into a police car, while I stood in my dining room surrounded by broken china and broken illusions, but whole. Finally whole. Mrs. Rodriguez came over, tears streaming down her face, pulling me into a hug. "I'm so sorry I didn't do more sooner," she sobbed. "I should have." "You saved my life," I told her. "That card you gave me, it started everything. You saved me." The next few hours were a blur. Statements to police. Photographs of my throat where Brian's fingers had left marks. Paramedics checking me over. But through it all, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of fear, of shame, of silence had been lifted. Brian was charged with elder abuse, aggravated assault, battery, false imprisonment, and financial exploitation. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Teresa, told me he'd likely face 15 to 20 years if convicted on all counts. The trial was set for August. "We have everything we need," Teresa assured me. "The recordings from tonight alone would be enough, combined with your documentation from the past month, the medical records, witness testimony from your neighbors and hairdresser. He doesn't stand a chance." I moved in with Mrs. Rodriguez while they processed the crime scene and while I figured out what came next. She set up her guest room for me, brought me tea, sat with me through the nightmares that came those first few weeks. "Why did you help me?" I asked her one evening. "Because I saw my sister in you," she said simply. "Her husband almost killed her before she got out. I swore I'd never stand by and watch it happen to someone else. I'm just sorry it took so long." "You planted the seed," I told her. "Everything that came after started with that card." The court date arrived in August, 4 months after that terrible, wonderful Friday night. I sat in the courtroom, flanked by Patricia and Teresa, and told my story. Every humiliation, every blow, every moment of fear. It was excruciating and exhilarating all at once. Speaking my truth after years of silence. Brian's defense attorney tried to paint me as a vindictive mother, a woman who'd set up her own son. But the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings spoke for themselves. The photographs, the medical records, the testimony from Mrs. Rodriguez, from my friends who'd tried to stay in touch, from the ER doctor who'd treated my broken wrist. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. When they came back, the word guilty rang out 6 times, once for each charge. At sentencing, the judge looked at Brian with open disgust. You were given the privilege of being this woman's son, of being entrusted with her care and love. Instead, you terrorized her, isolated her, and abused her in ways that shock the conscience of this court. He sentenced Brian to 18 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 12, plus 5 years of supervised release, mandatory therapy, and a permanent restraining order. Brian stood when they read the sentence. For just a moment, he looked at me. I saw a flash of the boy he'd been before life twisted him into something monstrous. Then the mask fell back into place, and he was led away. Teresa squeezed my hand. It's over. You're free. That was 6 months ago. I'm back in my house now, the house Robert and I built our life in. The house I was almost forced to leave, to lose. I've changed the locks, installed a security system, and repainted the guest room where Brian lived. It's my art studio now. I've taken up watercolors. I volunteer at the domestic violence shelter twice a week, sharing my story with other women who think it's too late, that they're too old, that no one will believe them. I show them it's never too late. That, speaking up, even after years of silence, even when the abuser is your own child, is possible. Mrs. Rodriguez and I have coffee every morning now. She's become more than a neighbor, more than the woman who saved my life. She's family. I've reconnected with my friends from the hospital, with people I thought I'd lost forever. They welcomed me back with open arms and zero judgment. We have dinner once a month, and yes, sometimes I make pot roast. But now it's my choice. The wedding china that survived Brian's attack has been carefully pieced back together where possible and is displayed in a cabinet in my dining room. The broken pieces I couldn't repair, I used to make a mosaic. It hangs in my studio, a reminder that broken things can become something beautiful, that endings can be beginnings. I think about those 4 years often. The fear, the pain, the shame that almost killed me. But I also think about that moment in the library parking lot when Sarah told me I was safe. The moment Patricia suggested the plan that would free me. The moment Mrs. Rodriguez slipped me that card. Those moments saved my life. But ultimately, I saved my own life. I made the call. I gathered the evidence. I set the trap. I stood up and said, no more. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, turning in my own son. The answer is no. I mourn the boy he was, the man he could have been. But the person who terrorized me for 4 years needed to face consequences, and I needed to reclaim my life. I'm 59 now. I spent 4 years in a cage of fear and abuse. I refuse to spend one more day there. Every morning, I wake up in my own bed, in my own house, safe and free. I walk in my garden. I paint in my studio. I laugh with my friends. I live. And if you're reading this, if you see yourself in my story, if you're living in fear of someone you love or once loved, please know this. It's not too late. You're not alone. Help is available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline number is 1-800-799-7233. The Elder Abuse Hotline is 1-800-677-1116. Your life belongs to you, not to your abuser. Take it back. I promise you, freedom is worth fighting for. I spent 4 years afraid. Now I spend every day free. And let me tell you, there is no comparison. None at all.